Okay, today is an interesting day because it represents a bit of a shift or a change in direction. And, I wasn't really sure how much I wanted to talk about this until this morning when I received an email from a filmmaker. I don't know if I'd call him a friend, but somebody I know who is a filmmaker. And what I received, and by the way, if you hear a chirp, somebody objected in a comment the other day about the loud noise that seems to happen every once in a while on my channel. Well, that's because my African gray parrot Zuko is chirping every once in a while. So that's the story behind that. Anyway, so I get this email from this guy, and it's called, the title on it is How to Make a Film in 10 Weeks. And this is what I think about that. I want to really pay attention to my time here so I don't blab endlessly. But here's the bottom line. If you go on Facebook or whatever today, in the creative arena, what you have is a plethora of courses that you can buy and seminars you can go to, like this one from this guy that is going to ostensibly teach me how I can successfully create a film in 10 weeks. And the reason I wanted to talk about that today is I am so completely sick and tired of everybody positioning themselves as a teacher. Okay? Here's the reality, folks. People who cannot make a living doing what they do start selling a course. That's what they do. The reason they start selling a course is they can't actually make a living doing what they're doing. So this guy is not doing that well with his films, and I could get into why because I've watched his career path over 10 years. So I know what he's doing. I know how he's doing it, and I could totally see why he wouldn't be making a living at it. Which isn't to say he doesn't make good films or isn't talented, because he is. Okay? But when I got this course, I thought to myself, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and do a YouTube video. I'm going to talk about this because that's why I don't have a course. If you want to see how to create animation, just watch my 300 videos. Because what you're actually going to see is reality. Reality is sometimes you bump into roadblocks that you didn't expect. Sometimes the software blows up. Sometimes you spend 2 months pursuing a certain direction and find out it was the wrong one. Okay? This is what happens in the real world. And so if I was going to create a course, what I would do is I would create a bunch of very concise, carefully edited videos to make it seem like I have the answers for how you can do this thing and do it successfully and not have all the problems that go with what happens in the real world. The problem is that would be a lie. And I'm not interested in lying just to make a few bucks, okay? It's not worth it to me. So yeah, if you watched this channel, you're going to see some ups and downs over the months. You're going to see me completely change my workflow ideas on multiple occasions. You're going to see my character designs change. And guess what? Today I'm introducing yet another major change. And that's why you see what you see on the screen, is because there is a change of direction that's happening, and I'm going to explain why. Okay? I've spent 1 year creating this anime project, which I absolutely believe in. I think it's cool. I'm opening up Blender right now so we can look at the edit. And I expect that this property, let's call it a property. When you talk about any set of characters or any story or any mythology that you're going to create, let's call it a property, because we're trying to create something that we can put to market in some way. Okay, we might do that by crowdfunding it. That would be a legitimate pathway. We may do it by creating the property in total and actually selling it to a distributor or a platform or a network. Those are your three main audiences: platforms, networks, and distributors. Okay? Why don't we see anything here? Okay, there we go. This thing is up to about 8 minutes long. Now, the thing that's interesting about this is this has been created on the basis of, Valerie, who's primarily writing it in the sense of the plot. I mean, we're kind of working out the dialogue and those sorts of things together, but we haven't actually engaged in a real disciplined writing process. Now, every other film that I've ever created, of which there are basically 8, two of which have been modestly successful. Uh, there's a very disciplined writing process that usually takes 2 to 4 weeks. With this thing, the whole thing was, let's spend this 2019 learning how to do animation. Take the talent that I had was basically as a cartoonist. I can draw characters as you see here. I hadn't done a ton of animation, but my sense was always that I'd probably be reasonably good at it. And so what we said is, well, let's kind of know in the back of our minds what the story is, but then let's focus on the craft of animating, and let's figure that out. And then as we get a certain amount of work done, we'll go ahead and start filling in the blanks on what happens next, and yada yada yada. So the basic first act of the show, we pretty much are through, other than the fact that there's shots. We could skip all through this and see all kinds of shots that really need to be redone, or basically take what I've learned to date, apply it to that shot, and see if we can get the overall quality up. Okay, so in the more recent shots that were done, we're actually getting into Act 2 here, where Akari wakes up and realizes she's in a strange location. Okay, so this is a cool property, but it was approached for the reasons I just described, and it's being done in the manner that I just described. Okay, so to put this, again, I don't want to waste tons of time. I'm going to try to get this into 30 seconds. I had a conversation last week with the distributor who distributes the films that I have that have been successful, okay? And that basically amounts to 2 films. And those 2 films would be this one. Hello. Trying to get Firefox to... Okay, so I'm just going to drag this down here. Boom. Okay, so Healed by Grace, chick flick horse movie, and then the sequel to this picture. Those are the ones that have been reasonably successful, decent money makers, yada yada yada. Okay, so I had mentioned to this distributor probably 5 years ago this idea that I had for a cartoon. At the time, nothing was selling. I mean, literally, the only thing that was selling in the sort of faith and family, good values media space was the property which you may have heard of called VeggieTales, which is basically a 3D CGI cartoon about a bunch of characters that are in fact vegetables, and that was created back in the 90s and has had an incredible shelf life. Okay, so the marketplace changed 5 years ago when and so these characters here are part of this concept that I came up with 5 years ago, and the distributor was like really cool to the idea, like cool in the sense of, we're really not interested in that because all the data tells us it isn't going to sell. Nobody's buying that right now. Okay, so 5 years ago, the marketplace, the bottom dropped out of the marketplace because the retail DVD environment disappeared. And then over the last 5 years, what happened was, first of all, Netflix gained ascendancy, and then they started spending billions of dollars on original content. Then Amazon started to come on and gain some ascendancy. A lot of the legacy programming that you used to enjoy on terrestrial television migrated from Netflix over to Amazon as Netflix refocused on original content. Well, it turns out Amazon's doing the same thing. Now, the money picture for producers has kind of moved in this way. Netflix is it's a hard nut to crack, but it can be done. Amazon's a little easier, but they keep apparently changing their revenue model so that most of your revenues don't come on Amazon Prime from somebody buying or renting your movie. It's going to come from somebody who has Prime Video just watching your movie because it's included with Prime Video. So the royalties that go with that are really where the revenue picture is for Amazon, but Amazon keeps lowering the royalty. Okay. So what's interesting today, let me see if I can get this to work. Okay, this worked this time. Okay, so what's interesting to me today is platforms like this. Let's look at VRV, which is going to be VRV by Crunchyroll, and that is going to be tons and tons and tons of anime. Or how about this one, Pluto.tv, which is essentially like a self-contained cable system. It's got a bazillion channels, every possible thing you could be interested in, and you just pick a channel, and it's streaming material, so you watch what's on at the time. Okay. So I can hear that in my headphones. I'd have to look at OBS to see if you guys, yeah, you guys can hear it too. So I'm gonna kill Pluto TV, but Pluto TV is basically like cable TV. It's just streaming and you watch what you watch. And then another one I'd like to mention would be Tubi, which I have found to be quite good, and my movies are both available on Tubi. So what makes VRV, Tubi, and Pluto TV, and a bunch of other platforms different today? What's different today is that these are free. They're ad supported, and frankly, you can watch Tubi for, if you watch a half-hour show, you're only going to see like 3 commercials. So it's not like you've got this really intrusive, constant barrage of commercials. It's not like that. It's actually very tasteful, very limited, and what's happening today in the distribution picture for movies like this is that more and more of the royalties that are coming in are actually coming from these platforms, and young people in particular are embracing them because they're free. Why the heck am I going to pay for Amazon, or why the heck am I going to pay for Netflix when I can just like watch most of what I want to see on these platforms? So the battle for your Netflix and your Amazons is sort of becoming the idea of, can we create compelling content that's original, that's so compelling that it gets people to stay with our platform and not migrate over to these other freebie platforms. But the point, for my purposes, is that this is all on an arc, and the ascendancy of Amazon seems to be dropping now at this point. They were kind of, Netflix was king of the hill, then Amazon was kind of in a way king of the hill, and now it's kind of leveling out to where you have these other platforms. So what did that do to the climate for producers? What it did was it created a climate where for the first time there is a huge appetite out there for original programming of all kinds. Okay, and what we're seeing in the particular distribution climate that I've worked in is that some of these other properties in the animated space are actually doing okay. And the speculative numbers that have been given to me in terms of what it seems a show like this could earn are compelling enough to go, you know what, stop the presses, I'm in the cartoon business. Okay, that's the way I look at it. Okay, I'm going to kill this. And that's what this is all about. In life, there are many directions that you can go. And when I got the email from the filmmaker offering essentially a course, it just made me want to puke. I thought, I so don't want to be that guy. I've kind of poked at it. In my local community, I've sponsored like a boot camp for young filmmakers. And what it turns out is, what my experience was, this is about a year to 2 years ago, where I sort of spent some time trying to be of what help I could be to the local filmmaking community, because I'm basically the only guy in the region that's ever created a movie that's actually, done, pretty well, like internationally. Okay. What I found was that for the most part, those young people, they all think they kind of know everything, and they're just really not interested in the advice of an old fart like me, and they'd rather spend another 10 years kind of pretending and being in their own little closed circle amongst themselves, where each of them, a few key characters in particular, each pretend that they know what this business is about, and they've got contacts, out in Hollywood, this sort of stuff. It's so ridiculous. And then years keep going by, and they all do nothing. They just do nothing because it's more fun to pretend, I suppose. So do you like pretend forever, or do you? Well, I'll start creating a course. I'll go ahead and on my YouTube channel, I'll set up a Patreon, and I'll create an animation course, and this is all the ways I'm going to make money. Why? Here's the answer: because I'm not making money creating animation. I'm just talking about it. Well, I'm not going to be that guy. I will be honest. I spent a year saying I'm going to learn the craft. I'm going to make the mistakes. I'm going to screw around. I'm going to get my drawing up to where I think it needs to be, yada, 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 yada. But 2020, which we're already, a month and a half into, it's kind of like go time. So initially I thought that we were just going to keep really rocking and rolling with this anime and just try to step it up a bit. But I'm a guy that says, you know what, if the marketplace is saying, hey, here's what we want, because the film I showed you, the chick flick horse movie, the reason that film was successful, and when I say successful, I'm saying at retail it made about $1 million. Okay, that's not great, but in Hollywood terms, it's horrible. But for an independent filmmaker who made the film for less than $10,000, not too bad. Okay. Um, and so to get back on track here, if the marketplace is moving in a direction that says, here's what we want, what I was going to say is that the reason that film was what it was is because I met with the distributor. I said, what's selling? He said, well, here's a tick list of, well, if it's got this characteristic, horses are always good. Okay, blah, 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 blah. And then I took that, rolled it all into the script, and that was the movie. And sure enough, predictably, the film did very, very well. There you go. Wasn't even complicated. Because I listened to the marketplace and I spoke to someone and got advice from someone who actually knew what the hell they were talking about. I recommend you do the same. Whatever it is you want to do, find somebody who knows what they're talking about, who isn't pretending. Don't just look at your peer group. Go to people who are in the business and say, look, I'm serious about doing this thing. I want to do it. What do I have to do to either get my craft up to the point where my quality's good enough, or B, craft a property in such a way that it's going to be accessible and easy to sell. It's got to be easy for you, the distributor, or the platform, or the network, to be able to sell to your viewers. Okay? So yeah, you have to sort of subjugate your creative impulses to a degree in order to satisfy the current proclivities of the marketplace. Don't shy away from that. If you have the opportunity to do that, what you're going to discover is that the limits on your creativity are what make you creative. You will be more creative because of the limitations. And all these artists that are, pie in the sky and, well, I'm going to do everything my way. You can do that, and I actually have a friend who has a son who wants to be an actor. And he's got this attitude. And so when people who actually know what they're talking about try to give him advice, he goes, oh, no, that's not what Prince did. And I can't remember who the other two are. There's like 3 people he always names that it's like, well, no, I'm going to be like them. Well, okay, yeah. Okay. Yeah, your odds of being the next Prince are, well, you're far more likely to win the lottery, and you're 100 times more likely to be struck by lightning than you are to win the lottery. Well, why is that? Because a prince only comes along. You just do the numbers, run the statistics. Once every 10 years, somebody like a superstar comes along that's just like this. And I'm not saying Prince is. I've never been much of a fan myself. But somebody who is so culturally dominant in the entertainment space that they become an icon, like a Michael Jackson kind of thing. In fact, that's one of the other ones he would cite. Those are so rare that, like I said, you can just run the numbers. How rare are they? Well, how rare is it to be struck by lightning? Okay, well, how rare is it to win the lottery? So, yeah, you might be that guy, but you're not. So why not try? And the whole thing about it is that if you are smart and you try to function in that space in such a way as to be able to craft a career, just intelligently and humbly, just trying to do the best you can at what you do, that enormously increases your chances of being the next, superstar person anyway. Because the truth is, being a prima donna doesn't actually work that well. It tends to make people not like you. And there are let me put it this way. I should put this in another video all by itself. There's 3 aspects to success that you should consider: talent, work ethic, and likability. Okay? This would be, in fact, I'm going to put this in here. Let's just look at this. This is really, really important stuff. Let's put this on this page. Okay, I'm gonna just write down these 3 things. You got talent. You've got work ethic, And which, by the way, my work ethic is not like the greatest ever. I'll admit that. You got work ethic, and then you've got likability. Okay? These three characteristics are very important to consider. Why? Because if you have one of them, okay, if you have just one, then you could be just somebody that everybody kind of knows. I'm just going to pick a singer. This shows my age, but let's just say Steve Perry singing for Journey. Okay. Was his voice so much the right sound for the right time, and his talent was so amazing that alone helped him to help them to be really successful? I would say so. Now, you could talk about the fact that he's a pretty good songwriter and all these other things too, and he may have a great work ethic. But the point is, it was the talent that was the driver. Okay. Now, those guys as an entire group had a good work ethic, I would have to say as well. But this is my point. If you have one of these, if you have an incredible work ethic, you can actually have marginal talent and you will still be successful. Okay? And guess what? I have bad news for you people who think that talent and work ethic are everything. The truth of the matter is that if somebody's really easy to get along with and people enjoy working with them, if you have that, you can have just a modest work ethic and very mediocre talent, and you'll still be able to craft a nice career. Now, here's the thing you really want to consider. What if you have two of them? What if you've got a killer work ethic and everyone likes to work with you? Okay? If you have just one, let's just put it this way. If you have one, you can be successful. If you have two, you're essentially unstoppable. Did I spell that right? I'm sorry. I'm going too fast. Unstoppable. If you have three, if you have all three of these, like lofty world-class talent, a killer work ethic, and you're a decent person, which, by the way, when these two go together, they almost never go with this one. But sometimes they do. Sometimes they do. If you have all three, you're elite. You're going to be, you have the ability, it's not a guarantee, but you have the ability to be considered one of the best in the world, in history, at what you do. Okay? So as an example of this, I'm going to give a couple examples. Stephen J. Cannell, okay, the most prolific creator of television in the 1980s. You know what the interesting thing is about Stephen J. Cannell? Is that he had an amazing work ethic, and he's a really nice guy. The thing that he valued the most, even though he was called a mogul and all this stuff, but the thing that was the most important to him was that he was a writer. He loved to write. He would write for 5 hours a day, no matter what. Top priority. The thing that's amazing to me about Steve, who's, by the way, he passed away, I think, in 2010, is that he was not that great of a writer. If you go and you read his novels or you look at the scripts he wrote for TV shows, they're pretty cheeseball. And, you know, in my opinion, and I think he would have been the first to admit that. He was just proud that he had the opportunity to really keep working at it. But because of that, Stephen J. Cannell was unstoppable. He was not elite. No one talks about Stephen J. Cannell as being one of the greatest writers ever. Nobody, that conversation never happened because he wasn't. Okay? Maybe you could say, I'm just take a wild stab here. I don't know, but I'm going to speculate that somebody like Stephen King would be super high talent, super high work ethic, probably modest to okay likability. And so, again, he's kind of in between these two places. Okay? But for me, so what am I? I'm actually better than average talent, worse than average work ethic, and probably better than average likability. I can get along with a lot of different kinds of people in a lot of different circumstances, and I'm humble enough about my own ability that I'm willing to say, okay, if this is what you think works in the marketplace, I'm willing to target what you're going to be able to sell because I'm not so in my own bubble in terms of my own talent and my own vision and what do I want my voice to say. I'm not in that space really, to the point where I'm going to reject your good advice if you're the guy who's on the street actually selling the stuff and knows what's going on. Okay, so I would say I'm pretty high on likability and I'm pretty high on talent. My work ethic's horrible, and so I'm always trying to find the way to try to get the pretty good quality animation in an hour. How can I take what seems to take most people in the industry 8 hours or 10 people, and how can I all by myself do it in a couple hours? That type of a thing. I don't always succeed. In fact, I usually don't. But that's where my headspace is at. That's what I try to do. So since I suck on work ethic, although I do go in fits and in spurts where I kick out a lot in a short period of time, but then I sort of have the recovery time. But because of that, I've been unstoppable. This is the truth. I have been unstoppable. I have been able to spend the last 10 years making movies that actually didn't make very much money for the most part, but I've been able to do my thing, and I'm not like suffering and eating out of Alpo cans or anything like that. Life is fine and business is decent. So anyway, let's get back to this. So the point of this diatribe was that these are character designs for this property, which at this last conversation is really perfectly targeted now to what the marketplace is today and what we think could probably sell well in that marketplace. So for me, that means, as much fun as we're having with this, my market opportunity is in the family friendly, kid friendly space with cartoon properties that probably target, really ideally would be 2 to 12 years old, but it could be like, 8 to 15 and maybe even getting some of the young adult crowd. Okay. Well, this property has some things going on with it that would have to be rewritten and changed, like her losing her dress. That's just something that some parents wouldn't really dig their kids seeing, right? So because of that, and plus this thing was already conceived. It wasn't completely written. At this point, in just like 3 days, we basically know what the 12 episode arc is going to be. And most of the story beats of episode 1 have been arrived at. Now, I know myself as a writer, I can generally sit down and write a screenplay in about, well, it's pretty fast. I can write 5 pages an hour of good finished screenplay, because you can have kind of a rough draft where you're just kind of writing out the beats or whatever. But so what that means is I could generally write an episode. If I know what the story is and I know what the story beats are, I could probably write a cartoon episode in just a couple days, really. Which isn't ridiculous. I mean, think about it. Somebody who's writing for a show that's being produced, on a weekly basis has to be able to crank out their episode in a week. Now, in practice, that's not what actually happens. In practice, there's overlap of the production cycles, and the individual writers do have more than a week to write it. But to me, it's not ridiculous to say, there's no reason why we can't crank it out in, just a few days. So anyway, so we've kind of looked at this thing. We say, oh my gosh, everything's different now. It's 5 years later, and the marketplace has come around, and the opportunity to develop this show that I came up with years ago, the timing might be right. So since I went into 2020 with the intention to begin to turn this cartoony stuff into a business, finally, my year of preparation is over. I have to shift my attention in that direction. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to continue to poke at these other things, because I will. And I think the Futurama fan episode is a pretty cool concept as well. And by the way, I've got the story beats for that pretty well pinned down as well. So anyway, hey, there goes Valerie through the room. So anyway, that's the story behind that. I really wasn't going to talk about this until I saw the spam, really, email from this filmmaker colleague selling a course. And when I realized, golly, it's like everybody's doing this. Everybody is selling a course, and it's because the thing that they're all about, in his case filmmaking, in other cases animation, it's because they're not actually making a living doing the work that they claim to be all about. And to me, that's just sad, because there are opportunities in the marketplace to do this thing that you love to do, but you've got to be humble enough to go to the people who know what they're talking about, find out what you need to do to create a property that has at least some possibility of being successful, and then apply yourself to the discipline of creating that property. If you won't do that, stop kidding yourself. There's nothing wrong with just poking and playing. I've done plenty of it. So I could poke and play at animation for the next 10 years, and I could do like AMB Animation does here on YouTube. I mean, here's a guy that's a very, very just okay animator, just okay cartoonist who's selling courses and probably doing pretty well. So I don't really begrudge him the fact that in fact, I admire the fact that he's been able to turn it into a business. But the only reason he's doing that is because nobody's hiring him to create cartoons. I mean, just really think about that for a minute. Just wrap your head around that. Nobody is paying him to create cartoons. So he's selling courses. And when I got this spam from the filmmaking colleague, I was just like, you know what? I just don't want to be that guy. Just don't want to do that. Don't want to be that guy. So what do I want to do? Well, okay, since this is what I do want to do, is say, quit screwing around. You've had your season. This is talking to myself here. You've had your season of preparation. When you create something for the marketplace, it may fail. Not only that, even if it doesn't fail, I may not be satisfied with quality. Guess what? That's highly likely, because everything I'll tell you this. There's a film composer or really TV composer, Mike Post, who worked with Stephen J. Cannell. Mike Post says what I'm about to say. Stephen J. Cannell said what I'm about to say. The guitarist who influenced me a lot when I was in college was Rick Emmett from Triumph. He used to say this. These guys that all don't even hardly know each other. Well, actually, Mike and Steve did. But highly successful creative people seem to often that have a good attitude. There's some people that are prima donnas or have a bad attitude or seem to have a lot of angst in their life. But the ones that seem to be healthy and also really prolific, like they crank out a lot of work and seem to be normal, balanced, happy people, all seem to say this same thing. And here's what they say. They all say, and I've heard them say it, I don't look back. I don't look back on what I did before. Whatever I just got done doing, I'm immediately not satisfied with. I always think I can do better, and I'm always focused on what I'm working with right now or what I'm going to do next. And I just think that's a really healthy headspace to be in. The right attitude is that just realize that you're never going to be happy with what you do, and so it's okay. If this thing turns out to be, it's probably going to get some criticism in some ways because I'm not the greatest in the world at animation. But I know that I'm good enough that I can create something that'll probably do okay. It'll turn out to have been worth doing, both financially and creatively, I suspect. And so with that in mind, I am creating characters. And by the way, I need a better way to show this, because if I take the webcam to full screen, I think OBS starts getting choky. But what I'm going to show you here is I actually ordered these colored pencils that are red and blue. Ordered them on Amazon. I think this is reversed. I think the words would be reversed for you guys in the webcam. But what I did was I'm actually doing a lot of character design on paper, and specifically graph paper, because then I can actually see the exact spatial relationships. I know how many heads tall each character is. So if you followed me for a while, you should find this interesting, because the discipline of this, I never did on the anime. I've sort of poked at it here and there, but we're talking about a year-long learning process fits and starts and trying different things. And the biggest mistake I made during that year is not going back and doing the rigorous preparatory work like character model sheets, color sheets, the stuff that guides the production process. And then even if I had done those things, the next thing that for me would be mandatory and which kind of prevents that anime from necessarily being the kind of production I'm going to be totally on board with is I would want to write the thing. I would want to get the whole thing completely written so that I can wrap my head around who the characters are and I know what they're going to do. And that's part of the fun and enthusiasm of it, is knowing what's going to happen and knowing who your characters are, knowing the secrets that you're going to reveal over the course of maybe a certain number of episodes. So in the case of Akari's story, a lot of that preparatory work, and it's completely my fault. Let's be clear, this is my fault. But a lot of that preparatory work was never done. We sort of made it up as we went along. And it's been good, and it should continue, and it should be done. This is a cool property. But with this other thing, I'm doing this stuff. I'm actually saying, no, I'm going to take what I've learned and the mistakes I've made. This one's kind of interesting because you can see where I drew the character of Luca. I drew him 3 3 1/3, 3 2/3, and 4 heads high. Because I'm just like, I am going to work out exactly how tall this guy is. Okay, that sort of thing. So I'm not animating. I'm not just jumping in and doing pencil tests and all this, because I already know that I can do a pencil test. I know that. I don't need to test it anymore. Now what I need to do is come back to applying the disciplines of the craft so that not only so that I do a good job, and by the way, I'll just keep showing these. I know it's hard to see you guys, but this is kind of one of the villain characters. His name's Vespar. And this, I actually went back and started working with Akari. Going, okay, let's go out on graph paper and let's just deconstruct her face and stuff. And what I learned, I'm glad I did it, because this is what I discovered. An interesting thing about Akari. The interesting thing about Akari is that if you draw a circle and then you draw another circle so they sort of overlap like this. Okay, so now I'm going to change this to blue so it's easier to see. You'll see this, and then you go like this and just make it a little bit more pointy. Draw a line across here. You get the exact positioning for her eyes. Her eyebrows go up above that spot. Her ears fall in this pocket right here. And now if I go ahead and draw her pigtails, you can see that you pretty much get the character structure for Akari. I'm not getting her eyes right because actually, and I would say this too, I think I kind of blew that. Actually, the eyes should be just below the line, like so. Okay, so doing it all on graph paper, which by the way I did this was I just opened up Blender, File, New, General. Yeah, we'll save this. Okay, and then I go to the front view. Okay, forget that. We're not going to do this here. Trust me, I did it in Blender 2.79, but all I did was take a screenshot of the grid in Blender and then applied a color correction filter to it to be able to drag it into Krita so that I actually have my graph paper here in Krita as well. But that's what I've been doing is and here's another character. Here's Monkey. Monkey's interesting. Let me show you why Monkey's interesting. Here he is right here. This is Monkey. The interesting thing about Monkey that I found actually very interesting was that his design was take 4 squares and draw a circle like that, and now in this diagonal here, draw a football. Okay, and that's Monkey. I mean, yeah, okay, add a couple ears, add a couple eyes, but the interesting thing about it is every single one of these is the same underlying structure. Circle, football. Different angle on the face completely, circle, football. Different angle completely, profile, circle, football. Thought, okay, that's interesting. So these are the things that you learn by working with the graph paper in a more structured manner. You wind up seeing these mathematical relationships between in Mel's case, the halfway point I found that to make him look the way I wanted him to look, you always want to put the eyes just above the halfway point, not on. With a lot of characters, you'd want to be pretty much at halfway, but with Mel, you want to be just above that. Another thing specifically about him, I decided, is we're going for more of a little bit more of a Disney, a little bit more of a standard cartoon as opposed to anime kind of look. But one thing I wanted to do to keep him simple in his design was do the eyes like this. So think One Punch Man. Just an oval with a dot. No iris, you know, and those are just creative choices. It's not the right choice, it's just a choice, right? By the way, if you've stuck with the video this long, which statistically you haven't, so if you are, you're amazing and thank you. Tell me which one of these two you prefer. Because initially the hairdo was going to be this, which obviously is a little bit suggestive of Sokka from, I think of Sokka from Avatar. And then I kind of tried this hairstyle and thought, yeah, I kind of like that better for Mel. I don't know. This didn't work until I put the headband in. And then I'm like, there's the guy. Okay, so what do you think? Which one's better? I don't know. Interested to hear people's opinions. So I think that's it. 40 minutes. It's typical kind of length for my videos. I just wanted to share this information. This is what's going on. And by the way, here's another example. I took the character of Saito from Val's anime, and I actually put him on graph paper, and I figured out that he is actually heroic proportions. He's exactly 8.5 heads tall. And this gives a greater consistency and reliability to the nature of the work that I'll do on it going forward. So there's other things I could show you. This one's kind of fun. I was playing around with a stupid, silly concept called Team ASAP, as you know, Team ASAP, where each of the guys whose name starts with the letter A, their name's both Alan. You know, just stupid stuff. This is the girl. The S in ASAP is Sydney Hulu, which is kind of a twisted around version of Cindy Lou Who. And she's kind of a sexy Asian chick. So, just stupid stuff pops in my head. Figured I'd write it down. But anyway, so that's it for now. Thanks for hanging in there if you have done so. And as I always say, guys, there will be more later.